Welcome to Wealth Roadmap with Jeff and Steve, your guide to simplifying wealth management. Join us as we explore financial planning, taxes, investments, insurance, and legal frameworks to help you secure your financial future. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 14, I believe, here at the Wealth Roadmap podcast with Jeff and Steve. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Costello, joined here with Stephen Benny, and we have a exciting yet not so exciting topic today. We're going to talk about tax loss harvesting. Speaking about harvesting, we got Stephen Benny. He's one of the best when it comes to the harvest. He's going to do a great job today. For those of you that are curious on what tax loss harvesting is, long story short, it's basically when you have a brokerage account, a post-tax account. This does not apply to your retirement accounts because, as we've discussed in previous episodes, all of that is happening within a wrapper. When you buy, you sell, it's all happening within that retirement account wrapper. When you have a post-tax account, and let's say you have a position and you want to sell out of that position, you might owe money if there was a gain. But what happens if you, at the same time, have another position that lost? And so Steve's going to kind of break it down in terms of what tax loss harvesting, when the right time is, how to do it efficiently, what time of the year should you be doing it. So yeah, Steve, welcome to episode 14, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. What an introduction, Jeff. Thank you. So we'll get right into it. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, Jeff. Tax loss harvesting. It's a strategy used by investors to smartly reduce their tax bill, right? And as you mentioned, it's more for those post-tax accounts or accounts not held in. When we're talking about specifically this type of tax loss harvesting, accounts that are not held in retirement accounts, right? Because those are the accounts that do get taxed. So think of it as like a financial lever that can reduce or even at times eliminate the tax that's due on investment gains. So you can kind of shift the focus from simply just generating increased growth through investing in taxable accounts, right? Again, non-retirement accounts, to focus on really optimizing what you keep after taxes to allow you to keep more of your hard-earned profits. Because ultimately, the growth is only one side of the story. The taxes that you may have to pay can eat into that growth. And I think that's the biggest piece, right? I mean, Jeff, we talk about it all the time. What's kind of what are you taking home? What is that after tax return? Because we say this often, there are avoidable taxes and unavoidable taxes. The unavoidable taxes, clear as day, right? We can't get around paying those, but there are avoidable taxes. And if this strategy is used or implemented the right way, you can get around paying some of those avoidable taxes, again, if implemented properly.
So I buy an investment.
Yep.
4 years ago, I invested in Apple stock. And let's say I decide, hey, you know what? I need to pull some money out. But I also, a few years ago, invested in Coinbase or SoFi, maybe another stock that was hot at the time, or Peloton would be a good example. And at this moment, I've lost money in that position. So hypothetically, let's pretend I needed to, my daughter's wedding is coming up and I need $50,000 to go or to use for her wedding. So I decide, all right, I'm going to take out $50,000. So I decide to sell out of Apple stock, which has a gain of, let's say, 10,000. And then I also sell out of a position in Peloton, but I have a loss there of, let's say, 15,000. So how does that work? If I sell out a little bit of Apple, sell out a little bit of Peloton, I have a $10,000 gain from Apple, but I have a $15,000 loss from Peloton. How does that work when it comes to what my tax bill is going to look like?
Yeah. So you just illustrated tax loss harvesting right there. So that loss can now be used to offset that capital gains taxes that would be due on that investment that was sold for profit. So I think it was Apple that you mentioned,
Yep.
right? So that profit, that capital gains, you could use the loss to offset that capital gains. And so you're only taxed on the net profit. Simply put, profit made minus any of the losses. That would reduce the capital gains taxes that are due to you.
Gotcha.
Now, in this case, the net result is a loss, right? So the net capital loss can offset a maximum of $3,000 of ordinary income in 1 year. For married individuals filing separately, that deduction is $1,500. So that loss that you can now use to offset ordinary income, it's a really great way to not have to pay tax on a certain amount of money that you're able to now offset with that figure.
So if I would have just sold out of all of my positions in Apple, and didn't have this Peloton loss, I would have basically owed money in taxes. I would have owed capital gains rates based off my income. There's a lot of different factors in terms of what my tax bill would have actually looked like.
Yep,
But because I had this, position that it was at a loss, it offsets my gains, and therefore I actually don't owe any taxes on this money that I pulled out. And what you're telling me now is that in fact I even get a $3,000 taken off my ordinary income. So I went from possibly owing money, but now with the right strategy, perhaps I actually get a break in taxes. It's only so what happens. So again, I mentioned before, it was actually a $5,000
yep,
net loss. You said I can only write off 3,000. So what happens with the
exactly.
other
So
two?
right, so you could essentially use up that loss that year because you have the ability when you look at what you sold,
Yeah,
your remind me it was 10,000 of a gain,
10,000 of a gain, $15,000 of a loss. So it was a
right?
net loss
So
of five.
net loss of 5. So you can use that up that year. It would just have to be against capital gains versus ordinary income. So you have that gain of 10,000, you have the loss of 15,000. So long-term gain 10, long-term loss of 15. So wipe away the gain, 10,000, 10,000 goes away. Now you have this 5,000, 3,000 can be used to offset ordinary income, and then you have a $2,000 carry. You could carry that forward. Now, if you do sell more during that year, yeah, you could certainly use that up. If you don't, well, the nice thing about that is the losses that are harvested. So this $2,000, let's say that you have floating around that you didn't use,
Yeah,
you can carry that forward indefinitely. You could store it away. They retain their character as to short or long term gains, and then they could be used to offset capital gains or really offset ordinary income up to that limit, that 3,000 or 1,500 if married filing
yeah,
separately, in future years indefinitely or until they're used up.
gotcha.
So you're really in a position where if you use it, great, but if you don't sweat because you could just carry forward into future years.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously that just comes down to if I decide if I want between now and the end of the year if I'm going to sell out of anything. Right. I know that I have that $2,000 that I can buffer up against. Um, and we've seen this with other clients that have come through our door where, you know, maybe they're carrying over a loss of $50,000 from years prior, and it's just continuing to move forward and forward and forward. And that's where having that proper tax efficient strategy of using tax loss harvesting, using these losses that you're pulling forward in future years, to put you in a more sophisticated spot when it comes to taxes. Um, what happens? Again, we're as we're recording this, it's the beginning of July. When's the right time to look at all this? Should we be looking at it at on December 30th and looking backwards, or what's the right time for us to like consider tax loss harvesting strategies?
Yeah, I'm going to share for those of you who are listening. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see this, but if you're watching this, I'm going to share my screen. So, um, many people, even their advisors, what we typically find is they're implementing these tax loss harvesting strategies once a year,
Hmm.
and typically right at the end of the year. But we always want to look and look at the data to see, all right, well, if we looked at over the past X amount of years, how would that have worked out? All right. So Here we go. I'll share my screen.
And just for those, again, listening, watching, to satisfy our compliance directors, past performance is not indicative of future results. Um, so take this with for what it's worth. But
Well, thank you, Jeff. That was well said. So now that we got the compliance part out of the way, this chart, and I'm going to explain this, but again, the question is, when is the ideal time to do tax loss harvesting? So when you look at this chart with this is specifically the S&P 500 index. That's what we're measuring here, and the S&P 500 index is an index that's widely used. It's 500 of the largest companies. Most are familiar with it. It's a very common index. You'll see an interesting trend here. Since 1926, the market has finished the year on a positive note over 70% of the time. Okay. But if we zero in on the last 70 years and break it down by monthly return, you'll see here November comes up as the top performing month for the stock market. And December comes up or ranks as the third best. So when you look at that and you say, well, wait a minute. Then if I'm waiting to harvest tax losses until November and December, does it make sense?
yeah,
Right? Because if you're harvesting losses at a time when the markets are doing well, well, you're kind of backing yourself into a corner, because that might not be the best time to do the tax loss harvesting, right? So going back to, well, maybe it should be done throughout the year.
yeah.
And I think that's the key, is that it's not about just doing it once. It's about having an ongoing active tax loss harvesting strategy, and utilizing other tax management strategies that are very important, because that's how you'll be able to optimize. That's how you'll be able to really maximize or make the best use of this strategy when you're taking advantage of really daily market conditions.
So obviously, again, obviously we're looking at just the S&P 500 here. And again, hopefully you don't have any losers, so to speak, in your portfolio. But again, it's bound to happen to everybody. So reviewing this on an ongoing basis is so critical, as opposed to, like you mentioned, Steve, waiting till December. Because you might have lost the opportunity to do sophisticated tax loss harvesting.
Yeah, and kind of maybe not lost it completely, but when you look at the data, and if you have the opportunity, why not try to work it in throughout the year? Like, for example, Jeff, we were just working with a client. I mentioned ideally having a loss harvesting strategy. You want to look at it daily. When we develop these types of plans for our clients who have this after tax money, meaning money that's invested outside of retirement account, and we're utilizing tax loss harvesting strategies, we have a great platform for them that uses algorithmic trading that looks for daily loss harvesting opportunities. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the confidence to know that they have a strategy that's going to take advantage of daily market conditions, and it's happening every day. Because here's the data is great, but at the end of the day, we don't know what the next year is going to bring, the next 2 years are going to
Yeah.
bring. And right, it's that chart that I showed. It's over a period of time, and yeah, when you look at numbers, 70%, it's a high number, but you really don't know. And so having the ability to be able to take advantage of what happens daily, I think that's the key. And whether you're looking to do it on your own, or you're talking to someone who's kind of providing this advice, make sure that they have that capability to be able to take advantage of the daily market conditions. I think that's really the takeaway there, right?
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about this in another episode, but change is one of the hardest things someone can go through. And so, again, if you're holding on to that stock, and again, not to pick on Peloton, but let's pretend it's Peloton, and you're just hoping for that comeback, you have to be willing to cut bait, so to speak, in order to do these strategies, right? So, yeah, it's great that you have some funds or stocks or whatever it might be that have performed well, but to the example before, in the event that you need money and you want to sell out, you have to be able to cut bait and make those changes within your portfolio to, do this tax loss harvesting that we're, discussing.
Yeah, I mean, it's emotional, right? That
Yeah.
fear of missing out, it's a real thing. So
Yeah.
absolutely, and you take that away by, by having a strategy that automatically does it for you. So that's a very good point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we got through tax loss harvesting pretty quickly.
Agreed.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
what? One last thing, because this is another one. A lot of people say, "Well, is it going to be effective for me?" I'm not in the highest tax bracket, right? Or the answer to that, my answer, and you can certainly chime in, Jeff. It works regardless of whether you're in the highest tax bracket or not, because lower tax brackets still have to pay tax, right? So tax savings can still be realized even if in lower tax brackets. So don't think that just because you're not in a very high tax bracket that this strategy won't work
yeah,
or that you couldn't take advantage of it. I think it's something that you should take a serious look at, especially if you have money outside of retirement accounts and you're investing that money.
yeah, yeah. A dollar saved is a dollar earned, and yeah, whether it's hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, yeah, that's all money that you want to keep in your pocket. And that's why we preach so much on the tax efficiency of someone's retirement or financial plan. And you may say, yeah, well, you know what, it's just a few $100s. I can afford it. I heard this from another client. Jeff, I can afford to keep my kitchen faucet running, but I don't. Right? You may be able to afford the lights to stay on, but you turn them off. Right? So take the same approach with your retirement planning, with your financial planning. Just because you can afford to pay that little $700 tax bill, maybe again with the proper strategies, that money will compound over time and put you in a better position. So, we hope today's episode was as thrilling as tax loss harvesting could possibly be. I'm sure everyone was very upset with no icebreaker coming from Stephen Benny today, but he was too busy harvesting all over everyone's taxes, whatever that means. Everyone, have a fantastic day. We'll see you on the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Steve, any last words?
Harvest those losses. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, everybody. Take care.
Take it easy, everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed our podcast, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you soon.
Financial planning and advisory services are offered through Prosperity Capital Advisors, PCA, an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Ohio. One Team Financial LLC and PCA are separate, non-affiliated entities. PCA does not provide tax or legal advice. Insurance and tax services offered through One Team Financial LLC are not affiliated with PCA. Information received from this video should not be viewed as individual investment advice. Product discussions and illustrations are hypothetical in nature and will vary based on many factors, including but not limited to age, health, product, insurance carrier, and product design. You should consult the insurance carrier website and policy for detailed information. Content may have been created by a third party and was not written or created by a PCA-affiliated advisor and does not represent the views and opinions of PCA or its subsidiaries. For information pertaining to the registration status of PCA, please contact the firm or refer to the Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website. For additional information about PCA, including fees and services, send for our disclosure statement as set forth on Form ADV from PCA using the contact information herein. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money.